Hey everyone at home or wherever you happen to be. I'm Miss Jamie, and this is another episode of Art Explorations for Kids. So today we're going to talk about positive and negative space and what is that exactly? So positive space is the subject matter, what you focus on in a piece of art. Negative space is what is around that subject, sort of the background. And we can see that in images that we may look up of optical illusions, and we'll put some on the screen for you. What you focus on could be the dark or the light area, and that's the positive space. And then what you see as being pushed back, what you're not focusing on, is the negative space. And this is different for different people, so we're just going to play with that idea today in a space drawing we're going to do with some stars in the background or foreground, depending on how you see it. So we're going to take our Jumbo Jet black pencil, and we're going to start on one sheet of Bristol paper by drawing some stars. And then we're going to cut those out and apply them to another sheet that we're going to work some watercolor around. So let's make these stars. And some of you may know how to make a star. I'm going to show you a method. I'm going to start up here in one corner, go down diagonally, and come back up to where I started that first line, across, over, and meeting where I began. Now, you're going to want to really think about the space you're using when you're making your stars. You don't want to make your stars too big, but you don't want to make them too small. So about the size of the palm of your hand is good. If you want more stars in your night sky, then you're going to want to put them closer together. Look at the space you know that you're working with. But if you want some bigger ones and fewer stars, then you can sort of space them out and just work with the space that you have. And these do not have to be perfect. You don't have to try to get the angles of the stars perfectly even. It's going to give our stars and our background a lot of character, and it'll make each star unique. So now that I'm done with my sheet, I have all the stars I want drawn out. We're going to go ahead and have an adult help cut these out, and once we do that, we'll come back and use another sheet of Bristol paper and apply our watercolors. All right, so we have all of our stars cut out, and we're ready to begin painting our background. So what I want you to do is take these star stencils and place them on your paper, thinking about your composition, because wherever you leave a star, the paper is going to stay white, and then the rest of it is going to be this really pretty galaxy that we're going to make. So you're going to want to place them down where you're going to want each star to be. And you can take your time with this and think about it. Okay, so I have my stars where I want them. Let's see. We're going to go ahead and take our 8-round Creative Inspirations brush. Get it nice and wet. And we're going to start by dipping into this turquoise color. And you want to make sure that you are activating your paint. You'll see bubbles. I need to get a little bit more water. When that paint is getting nice and wet. And you're going to hold down your stencils very carefully and just lightly tap the brush onto the paper. And just work around your stencils. And I have a sheet under my paper on the table to protect the table and my work surface from when I go over the edge, because we want to make sure that we cover that edge from the paint. I'm going to dip back into the water and get a little bit more paint. Remember, just lightly dabbing. If you get a lot of water on your brush, that's perfectly okay. You can work it out even further into the middle here. But we're not trying to cover the whole background. You don't have to worry about getting all of that space back there, because we're going to go back in with a second color when we're done going around our stencils and get those extra white spaces. And you can see how I'm working around the stencil. When I get to the side here, I'm moving my hand over to make room for that, my other hand that's working the brush. But I'm not moving my star stencil. And I'm keeping the fingers that I have applied to the back in the same spot as much as I can. And don't freak out if you get some paint on you. These are watercolors, so they're gonna wash right off. Okay, so now you can see that I have finished going around the stencils with my first watercolor color. And we're going to go ahead and get the paint out of our brush, let it sit off to the side, and then we're going to let this dry for a second and come back and pull the stencils off and then add our next color. Okay, so now that we've given this time to dry, we're going to go ahead and take the stencils off and see how it looks. Oh, look at that. So cool. Okay, so what you'll notice is I have some areas where paint got under my stencil, and that's okay. Again, it just gives our stars a little bit more character and adds more interest in what's going to be our positive space in the end. So now we're going to go ahead and grab our paintbrush again, get it nice and wet, and come into this deeper blue that is just below the color we were working in. And you're going to apply that same soft dabbing technique to these white areas in the background. And make sure not to get the stars that we've already done the stencils for. And when you start bringing that deeper blue into your turquoise, and just let it blend on the edges. And you can bring it into your turquoise some. There's no right or wrong to this. we're using the dabbing technique because it is, one, when using stencils, a really good way to apply paint and get as little under the stencil as possible. But two, we're also getting this really fun texture in our background. And it also gives us a really fun way to have these two colors interact and kind of gives us some depth in our night sky. Remember, it's okay if some of your areas are darker or lighter than others. We're not trying to get even coverage with the color here. The different variations of light and dark just give it all that more depth. So now I'm done with my background. I'm going to go ahead and get the color out of my brush. And now we have this beautiful night sky. We have all this texture that we've worked into our background. And you can see that our stars have now become our positive space. Our background is pushed back, and what pops out at us are our gorgeous stenciled stars. So I hope you guys had fun making this night sky with me. This is going to be the end of the beginners portion, and in a second we're going to continue on. If you would like to add some more details and go a little further with this picture in the advanced section. Okay, so welcome back to the advanced version. We have let our painting dry completely, and now we're going to start adding into the background some more stars and details with purple lake, lemon yellow, and cadmium yellow hue. And you don't have to use the colors that I'm using, but you can use any of the colors that you like from the kaleidoscope set and any amount. But I'm just going to show you the technique for adding these stars into your background, and I decided to choose some more complementary colors to the background color that I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of my lemon yellow here, and if you get too much paint on your brush, you can just lightly dab it off on the side of your palette. And using the same technique that I showed you when we were first drawing our stars, I'm going to do a similar technique while painting. Remember, we started up in the top corner, came down diagonally, but I'm going to pick my brush up, come back up a little across from where we first started, make that second line, and get a little bit more paint. Pick the brush up and come down again, across, and then connect where we began to that last line. And this is a little bit different with the paint because with the pencil, I just kept the pencil on the paper and kept pulling it across to make my star shape. But with the brush, I'm making sure that after I make each line, I pick up. And then I'm going to go back in and fill in my star. And I'm just going to keep doing this around my paper until I fill in as many stars as I want. around the background, making sure that I stay outside the boundaries of my stenciled stars. So what I'm doing is applying the stars one color at a time, just because I want to have to wash off my brush as little as possible, so I can wash off between each colors as opposed to between each star that I'm making on my paper. So I've already gone through and I've added in my lemon yellow stars, and now I'm going to start adding in my cadmium yellow hue stars. And if you really want your stars to pop in that color that you're putting down to really shine through, after you do your first coat, you can let it dry and apply a second coat to your stars. And now I'm going to add in my purple lake stars. So I'm happy with all the stars I have in the background, and I'm going to wash all that paint out of my brush. And with the acrylics, you want to make sure that you really get that paint out well, because if you don't, it's going to dry and your brush will be ruined and you won't be able to really use it anymore. And a good way to make sure that you've gotten all that color out is to get a paper towel and blot it before you're about to dry it, and just make sure all the color is out of those bristles. Alright, my brush is nice and clean. So now that we've added more to our background, you can see that we've tackled positive negative space in a different way. So before I was talking about how you might have a black and white image creating that optical illusion, and we created that when we were starting off with our painting with just the white stars and the colored background. And we started adding more and more texture in with the color, and then more texture with our stars. So now we're showing positive negative space with texture. Our stars are this nice flat solid white, but then we have all this texture and busyness going on in the background, and it really helps those stars to stand out because they're calmer and easier to look at. So for our next step, if you want to add just a little bit more to your painting, we're going to take some soft pastel once this dries and add a nice glow to our stencil stars that we have here. Alright, so now we've let our stars dry in the background, and I'm going to grab my white pastel and I'm going to apply this just inside my stars. You can see I'm making a couple of layers by doing a couple of back and forth strokes with the pastel. And that's because in a second we're going to take our finger and smudge out from our stars and create this really pretty glow. So I've gone around all my stars now, and we're going to take 1 or 2 fingers and just in a circular motion pull the white pastel that we have out along the edges. So now we're done, and you can see we've added a nice soft glow to our stars. Make sure that you wash your hands directly after applying your pastel before you touch anything, because if you don't, you're going to get the smudges of what you were just working with all over the place. So if you still have some little powdery bits from your pastel on your paper, just go ahead, take your paper and shake it off in the trash. And you have your completed night sky. So thank you so much, you guys, for following along with me. I hope you had as much fun doing this project as I did creating it with you. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next Art Explorations for Kids.